At the conclusion of every March Madness, there is one player that earns the title as the tournament's most outstanding player. This is a highly coveted award given to the player that stepped up on the biggest stage to help lead their team to a national title. And what I've always found cool about this award is that it isn't necessarily always given to the quote-unquote best player on the team, but rather the player that most stepped up game after game with the season on the line when it really mattered. As such, several winners of the award have actually been those that going into the tournament were considered the second, third, or even fourth best players on their team. But what happened to these players after earning this coveted award? Do many go on to have successful NBA careers, or do they wind up fizzling out soon after? Well, today I'm going to be looking at the last 10 most outstanding players of the NCAA tournament and analyzing how their basketball careers turned out. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoy, and subscribe to the channel for more sports content. Now with that out of the way, let's dive into our first player. In the 2014 NCAA tournament, senior point guard from UConn, Shabazz Napier, took home the honors as the tournament's most outstanding player. Throughout the Huskies' 6-game run to the championship, Napier averaged an impressive 21.2 points, 4.5 assists, and 5.5 rebounds, while shooting an impressive 46% from 3, helping lead his 7th-seeded UConn squad to a national title. After his impressive March Madness showing, Napier would enter the NBA draft and would wind up being selected 24th overall by the Charlotte Hornets before being immediately traded to the Miami Heat. His NBA career would unfortunately be defined by lack of consistency, being traded after his rookie season and then going on to play for 5 more franchises throughout his brief NBA career. As a result of being moved around so often, he was never able to nail down a consistent role with any team or find his rhythm offensively, shooting under 40% from the field for his career and 34% from 3. His last NBA appearance was in 2020 with the Washington Wizards, where he was actually putting up career numbers across the board, but would still end up being cut at the conclusion of the season. He'd go on to play several seasons overseas in Russia, Mexico, Serbia, and now currently in Italy. After taking home the 2015 National Championship, Duke freshman point guard Tyus Jones was awarded Most Outstanding Player after putting up averages of 13 points, 4.5 assists, and 3.2 rebounds a game. After struggling early on the first few games of the tournament, he'd slowly find his groove before coming up huge in the championship game, putting up his best performance of the entire year with a season-high 23 points to go alongside 5 rebounds. At the conclusion of his strong freshman season, Jones would declare for the draft and be selected 24th overall by the Cavaliers and then immediately traded to the Timberwolves. Early on in his career, he's mainly served as a quality role player capable of providing a quick scoring punch off the bench. However, in this most recent season with the Wizards, he assumed the role of starting point guard and had a career year averaging 12 points and 7 assists. However, as things currently stand, it's unlikely the Wizards bring him back, and with his play from last season, he'll have an opportunity to land a pretty sizable contract and role with a new team. And if he manages to find a good fit, I certainly think he can continue to build off last year and be a key piece wherever he ends up. After a dynamic scoring freshman took home the Most Outstanding Player award the previous season, we now move to the opposite side of the spectrum with the steady and reliable senior point guard Ryan Arcidiacono from Villanova taking home the honors in 2016. Arcidiacono took on the role as the main leader of the team throughout the season, and with his experience and leadership, he would be leaned upon heavily during their March Madness run. And fortunately for the Wildcats, he delivered, averaging 15.8 points, 2.2 rebounds to go alongside 3 assists per game, with none being bigger than the one he dished to teammate Chris Jenkins for the game-winning shot in the championship game. He was the definition of reliable and consistent throughout the entire tournament, shooting 66% from the field and an absurd 61% from 3 during the title run. However, despite his impressive college resume and lights-out performance in the NCAA tournament his senior season, he'd go on to be undrafted before eventually being picked up by the Spurs G League affiliate, and the following season would sign a 2-way contract with the Chicago Bulls. He got some decent minutes with the Bulls for a couple seasons, but has since been unable to nail down a consistent spot in the NBA, being relegated back and forth to the G League on multiple occasions for several different teams. After being passed around for a few seasons, he's now made his way back to Chicago and currently playing for the Bulls G League affiliate. Moving on to the 2017 tournament, the Most Outstanding Player would be awarded to junior UNC point guard Joel Berry II, who in the 6-game span averaged 13.8 points, 3.2 assists, and 2.3 rebounds a game. And what makes the stats even more impressive is that he was reportedly hampered with injuries the entire March Madness run, with both of his ankles being banged up. Despite being a bit hot and cold offensively throughout the tournament, he stepped up when he needed to and was always the guy to knock down a big shot when the Tar Heels needed him, especially in the championship game, scoring 22 points. Following his strong junior season, Barry would decide to return to North Carolina for his senior year to further develop and help the Tar Heels go back-to-back. Unfortunately, the dreams of a repeat title run would fall short, as they'd end up being knocked out in the second round the following year. And individually for Barry, despite having another solid season, he didn't really make any great strides in improving his draft stock, and would wind up going undrafted. He would go on to play a couple seasons in the G League with the Lakers and Hornets affiliates, before eventually signing an overseas deal to play in Turkey. However, shortly following the 2021 season, Barry would officially announce his retirement from professional basketball, never stepping foot in an NBA game. Despite his retirement, he is still around the game of basketball, currently serving as a basketball analyst for the ACC network. After failing to repeat in 2017, Villanova in 2018 would once again claim the title of national champions, with redshirt sophomore shooting guard Dante DiVincenzo earning Most Outstanding Player. Interestingly enough, with so many NBA-level talents on the squad, DiVincenzo actually wasn't really considered one of the marquee players for that Villanova team, and actually came off the bench a majority of the season, but he showed up when it really mattered, averaging 15 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 3.7 assists throughout the tournament, including a dominating performance in the finals in which he exploded for a career-high 31 points and leading the way in a blowout win. After going largely under the radar the entire collegiate season, his performance in the championship game alone was enough to skyrocket him up draft boards, all the way into the first round where he would be selected 17th overall by the Milwaukee Bucks. After dealing with some injuries early on in his NBA career, he'd eventually find himself in a similar role as he was in at Villanova, being a solid scorer and rotational piece for various teams off the bench. However, in his most recent season with the Knicks, he'd have a breakout year, averaging 15.5 points and shooting over 40% from behind the arc. His drastic improvement was undoubtedly one of the major catalysts for the Knicks' strong season, and with him being under contract for the next 3 seasons, he's certainly going to be a key piece for them moving forward, as they attempt to build a championship contending roster. After suffering a historically embarrassing loss in the previous year's tournament to a 16th seeded team, UVA junior shooting guard Kyle Guy would come back with a vengeance, earning Most Outstanding Player, averaging 14.3 points and 5.2 rebounds. Despite being on a team with a future NBA lottery pick, it was Kyle Guy who was the team's go-to scoring option, and his 2019 tournament run was filled with countless highlights and clutch buckets, namely in the Final Four game against Auburn, in which he drained 3 consecutive free throws with less than a second left to secure the Cavaliers' spot in the championship game, and Guy came up huge in that game as well, racking up 24 points. Following his impressive tournament showing, he'd go on to be selected in the second round with the 55th pick by the Knicks and immediately traded to the Sacramento Kings. His stint in the NBA would be very short though, lasting just 3 seasons and seeing very limited NBA action, eventually being waived by the Heat following the 2022 season. He'd go on to sign a contract to play overseas in Spain, which is where he's currently playing to this day. After the cancellation of the 2020 tournament due to COVID, the 2021 tournament saw junior point guard from Baylor Jared Butler be awarded Most Outstanding Player. Being as he was a consensus first-team All-American that year, he had a heavy weight on his shoulders to lead his team through March Madness, and he successfully took on the challenge, averaging 15.2 points, 5 assists, and 3.5 rebounds. Despite some early struggles in the tournament, he would save his best performance for the final 2 games, notching 17 points in the Final Four, and then 22 points and 7 assists in the championship game. After declaring for the draft following his junior season, Butler would be selected with the 40th pick by the New Orleans Pelicans, and then traded to the Utah Jazz. His NBA career thus far has been pretty quiet, getting very limited minutes, but in the few opportunities he's had, he's definitely shown some flashes of being an NBA-level talent, and after signing a multi-year deal with the Wizards following the 2023 season, I'm very curious to see how he continues to develop and if he'll be able to further take advantage of the opportunities given to him in the NBA. Continuing the trend of guards, senior shooting guard Ochai Agbaji would take home Most Outstanding Player for the 2022 tournament. After making the decision to return to Kansas for his senior year, he had a lot to prove to NBA scouts, and he was able to drastically step up his game, becoming one of the best players in the country. Not only that, but he excelled on the biggest stage, averaging 13.7 points and almost 5 rebounds a game for the tournament, shooting over 42% from 3 as well. After a cherry-on-top senior season to cap off his collegiate career, he became one of the top prospects in the 2022 draft and would end up being selected with the 14th pick by the Cleveland Cavaliers. So far in the NBA, he hasn't quite lived up to his lottery pick expectations, especially struggling on the offensive end. However, he has certainly shown some flashes of that first-round talent, and I think he can certainly benefit from being in a new situation. If he can just continue to get reps and develop his game, I think he has the potential to become a really solid NBA player. 2024 will be a big year for him, and I'm very excited to see what he has in store. Moving on to 2023, we have our first big man appearance of the list with UConn junior forward Adama Sanogo, taking home Most Outstanding Player after averaging 19.7 points and just under 10 rebounds a game during the Huskies tournament run. He proved to be a dominating force on the interior, muscling his way for easy points and controlling the boards, and was even able to knock down some three-pointers as well. He closed out the tournament with 3 straight double-doubles en route to a dominating title run for the Huskies. Following the tournament, Sanogo would declare for the NBA draft, but would wind up going undrafted, eventually signing a 2-way contract with the Chicago Bulls. In his first professional season, he saw most of his action in the G League, but would show a lot of promise in his limited NBA opportunities as well, especially on April 12th, recording a 22-point, 20-rebound game. Hopefully next year, he can build off that performance and solidify himself as a key piece in the Bulls' future moving forward. And now, lastly, the most outstanding player of the 2024 tournament was 5th-year combo guard out of UConn, Tristan Newton. After being a major contributor for UConn's title run the previous season, Newton would play an even bigger role for the Huskies the following season, averaging 14.5 points, 7.2 assists, and 4 rebounds a game throughout the tournament. In the title game alone, he had an impressive all-around game with 20 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds, spearheading UConn's back-to-back title run. As things currently stand, he's in the process of prepping for the draft, where he's currently projected as a second-round pick. He's being highly praised by scouts for his strong defense and overall well-rounded game. However, things such as his age as well as inconsistent shooting are proving to be limiting factors in him being a first-round prospect. I think if he can land in a good spot, he can certainly be a guy that contributes right away, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see him getting most of his reps in the G League his first few seasons in the NBA in order to help his development. So that was the last 10 winners of the NCAA tournament's Most Outstanding Player, and how their basketball careers turned out. Overall, many haven't gone on to have very long or prosperous careers, and in many cases, earning Most Outstanding Player truly is the peak of their basketball career. Either way though, these players have all cemented their legacies in college basketball history and will forever be a part of an elite group of players that all stepped up and played their hearts out on one of the biggest stages in all of sports. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel for more sports content. If you have any additional thoughts on the video or have any other video suggestions, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. This is HCP signing off. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm out.